Now we have looked at writing, reading, rewriting, deleting, and even counting data, and also we've set up a table. We can now look at actually making this data visible to a user, as we don't really want to be displaying it with a message box all this time. So now we can start looking at the design of the form. Now this will be however you want to design your form. I'm just doing mine for these conditions. So I'm going to throw together a quick little look and screen that the user can use, and I'll show you how to implement a similar screen for this scenario. I have now set up a simple layout view and a design for the students and what the user will see themselves. So for this I've just done it for a single class, and that's just for this class A1, and you'd maybe have the college or school's name up here, but I've just got it as class students at the moment. It will have the student's name, the class and their age, then it will have a list down here, and it will have their age, class, their teacher, and any more information you want to add. So I'll just save this, and now we can go back to our SQL database. Oh, and again, for the design, that's set up however you want to set it up. So now if we go back to our database, we can now start adding some new tables and some information. So let's first leave this how it is and make a new table. Here we go, and we'll have this as classes, and let's also have class ID. Actually, we can just do ID. Have it as an integer, and then we want class. Also, we want name. So that'll be the name of the class, and teacher. So that'll be the teacher ID. So let's do an integer. And then for the name, we want to have it as characters. There we go. So now this will be for all the different classes. And then let's save this as classes. And now let's first refresh this. And make a new table here. Let's have this as teachers. Sorry, ID. Oh. So it's an integer. And then we want name. So that'll be the teacher's name. And that should be good for this for now. So this teachers. There we go. And now let's refresh the tables list. So far now, we can add more tables in the future, but so far we have 3 tables here. With those 3 tables, we can start working with those for the actual program now. So let's just have all these. So let's select the top 1,000 rows for all these. Here we go. Takes a second. And now I'm going to move this to the side for a second so I can see it. And you might have to do Control-Shift-R to refresh it if you get some problems. And they should go away. Okay, so for now we can look at the teachers. So we'll have the teacher's ID and the teacher's name. So let's first start by going to the form again, and let's add some information. So let's do write data, and let's just add a teacher or two. So we want to write to the database, and let's do, instead of server.table name, it's in the same database, but let's do teachers. And let's write so ID and we want to change name, to full name in the database. So let me grab this back and change name to full name, because we want to keep it the same across all of these. And let's do the same for classes as well. Go to classes, design, and change name to... Wait, no, we can leave it as name, because that's the classes, sorry. So let's close that. And now let's open these again in the top 1,000 rows. There we go. And now we can have this on the side again. So first let's start by doing the teacher's full name, and let's add 2 teachers maybe. So let's add... Let's think of a teacher's name. James Blakeman. Maybe. Something like that. It doesn't matter, it's just some information. And let's add them. Let's see if this works. Failed to write data. Okay. Let's see, why did that happen? Did it not find the... Okay, I fixed the error and made a slight modification in the process. So, for the write data method, it now, when it inserts the data, it uses the array to update string method I've talked about in the previous videos. However, it's a modified version now. So what it will do is, instead of doing the columns and then the values, so with the equal sign in between, I've changed it so there's 3 cases of all, where it does what it did before, columns, where it just goes through all the actual columns and concatenates them with a comma in between, and don't forget that square brackets around the column names due to spaces in the column names, or values, which for values it will do the exact same except with commas between the data values, which the data values have quotes around. So it's all very similar, it was just a modification of this first method, and what that means is we can still use the same columns and then a values function and then the values. And this will now work, and if I bring across the database, the entry of James Blakeman in ID of 1 is in the database now. So let's also add another teacher. Let's go with, let's say, now let's go, Karen Harper, and that'll be the ID of 0, let's say, and let's add them. Okay, they've been added to the database now. So if we load this up and have a little refresh, and we've got Karen Harper and James Blakeman in the database now. So if we go to the database again and look at the classes, we can now start putting a class or 2 in. So let's have, in the ID of 0, we want name, and we want teacher ID, and we want to have the ID of 0, and let's have computer science, which is quite fitting, and then the teacher ID of 1. So let's say this is getting taught by James Blakeman. So let's now put classes in here and run this. Close it again and have a look. And we now have computer science as one of the classes with the ID of 0. And let's add a second one for the ID of 1. And let's give this to Karen Harper and have this to be physics. So now we also have physics in the database. So now we have computer science and physics for the classes. We also have James Blakeman and Karen Harper for the teachers, and the teacher ID is 1 for James Blakeman, so he teaches computer science, which has the teacher ID of 1. And now if I also view students here, we have James Markson and Iris Watson. And James Markson has the class ID of 0, which means he does, if I go back to this, he does computer science. And I think this is where I'm going to slightly change the students bit, since the chances of them doing one subject is quite low. So let's have, if we go into this and do class 1 ID, class 2 ID, and class 3 ID. So now, let's say they're at A levels and they're doing 3 different classes. And this could be double classes, maybe. But I would say let's have a third subject in here. So if we add another class, and let's have that as maths, and put this as the ID of 2. And let's say it's also taught by James Blakeman. Here we go. Okay, so now we have all this data in here. I'm going to end this video here for the moment, and I'm going to have a follow-up video continuing on from this. So this is only part 1, and part 2 will be actually implementing this now into the form we've put together here, or the design that you've put together. And we can look at how you can communicate with all these boxes on the screen, all these text boxes, with the data in the database, and how to keep third form normalization across those forms. And by the end of this, we'll probably have about 5 or 6 tables working, so keeping third form normalization across the tables. So that's going to be it for this one. In the next one will be uploaded at the same time as this one, so you won't be missing out. And I'll continue on from this for that video.